The moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto that first tee at Pelican Golf Club, the entire place shifted. It didn't feel like a quiet morning at a golf tournament, more like the final seconds of a championship game where everyone's waiting for the star to take the last shot. Thousands of fans packed shoulder to shoulder around the tee box, many of them wearing Indiana Fever jerseys to an event that had nothing to do with basketball. The crowd roared before she even pulled the club back, a reaction most athletes don't get after winning something, let alone before swinging at anything. And as everyone tried to figure out why this golf event suddenly felt like a national moment, Clark casually dropped the announcement fans had been waiting months to hear. But the part nobody seems willing to talk about is what that announcement revealed. While the golf world treated her like a generational star, the league that actually pays her salary continues to act like her success is an inconvenience. The contrast was impossible to ignore, and it turned a simple Pro-Am appearance into something much bigger. If you listen closely, you could hear the story behind the story, one that says more about the state of women's sports than anything happening on the fairway. And it all started the instant her name echoed across that course. The energy hit long before Caitlin even reached the tee box. Fans were already stacked 3 and 4 rows deep before sunrise, filling the walkway like they were waiting for a finals MVP to walk out of the tunnel. People in Fever jerseys leaned over the ropes with phones out, shouting her name the moment they spotted her walking up the fairway. You could hear the excitement from the parking lot, car doors slamming, quick footsteps, the kind of rush you only get when people don't want to miss a single moment. NASCAR driver Carson Hocevar showed up just to swap jerseys with her, which only added to the swarm closing in around the first tee. Basketball fans were suddenly talking about drive angles and swing tempos, and golf fans found themselves chanting like they were courtside in Indiana. It didn't feel like a Pro-Am anymore, it felt like an event being swallowed whole by a fan base that follows Clark wherever she goes. And just as everyone settled into that electric chaos, she stepped into the spotlight and delivered the one update nobody expected to hear on a golf course. When Caitlin finally spoke, she didn't raise her voice or make some dramatic build-up. She just slipped the news into a casual conversation like it was no big deal, even though it changed everything. She revealed that her shoulder, the one that limited her range, her strength, and her confidence for most of last season, was fully healed. No pain, no restrictions, no hesitation. She said she'd been training quietly, rebuilding all the strength she lost, and for the first time in months, she felt completely back. Fans around the tee reacted instantly, shouting and clapping as if she had just sunk a 30-footer. But the real shock wasn't the update itself. It was where she chose to announce it. Instead of dropping the news through league media, team channels, or some scheduled press availability, she delivered the update at a golf event, a different sport, a different stage, a different audience. It was as if she intentionally selected a place where her words wouldn't be twisted, minimized, or drowned out the moment they hit the air. Here, people actually listened. Here, her announcement felt celebrated instead of managed. And that single choice spoke louder than anything else she could have said. The best part was that she didn't just talk about being healthy, she showed it. Every swing looked stronger than anything we saw during the WNBA season. Her follow-through was smooth, her shoulder rotation looked effortless, and the power behind her shots made it obvious she wasn't hiding anything. Fans whispered to each other as they watched, saying things like, "She wasn't moving like this in July," and they were right. This wasn't a player recovering. This was a star returning. The moment she confirmed she was fully ready for next season, the gallery buzz changed. Conversations shifted from golf talk to championship predictions. People started mentioning the Fever roster, the 2026 season, the offseason moves, and what a healthy Clark could mean for all of it. The announcement wasn't just a health update, it was a warning shot to the rest of the league. And the fact that she delivered it from the fairway instead of a WNBA podium made the message even louder. She wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to control her own narrative. Caitlin didn't just show up to play golf. She arrived looking like a walking announcement. Her entire outfit told a story before she even said a word. Head to toe Nike gear, clean and sharp, with her CC logo placed exactly where every camera would catch it. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was unmistakable. Every shot the broadcast captured framed that logo front and center, almost like a reminder that her brand is expanding into spaces far beyond basketball. When interviewers asked about the Player Edition golf shoes she was testing, she admitted they were still a work in progress and she wouldn't reveal them until they were perfect. It was a small comment, but it showed how seriously she protects anything tied to her name. She's not rushing, she's building something. What made the moment even more striking was how the golf world responded. The LPGA gave her the kind of welcome most athletes dream about: prime coverage, a pairing with one of golf's biggest stars, and media attention that followed her from the opening tee to the final putt. Broadcasters treated her like a high-profile guest, someone they were excited to feature, someone whose presence elevated the event. They highlighted her influence, praised her crossover appeal, and leaned into the buzz she brought to the course. The whole environment made it clear they saw her value and weren't afraid to embrace it. And that's where the contrast hit hard. Fans online couldn't ignore how different this treatment looked compared to the tone that often surrounds Clark inside her own league. While the golf world welcomed her impact and used it to energize their audience, the WNBA has developed a reputation, fair or not, for struggling to balance individual star power with its broader identity. You could feel the difference simply by watching how freely she moved here. No tension, no hesitation, no attempts to shrink the moment. Just a sport that opened the door and said, "Go ahead, shine."
The cameras captured more than angles and highlights. They captured the unmistakable image of an athlete whose influence isn't boxed in by one league. Her brand didn't just fit into golf, it thrived there. And as the day went on, it became obvious that this wasn't an accidental crossover. It was a preview of what happens when a sport decides to amplify its biggest star instead of containing her. The more the day unfolded, the harder it became to ignore the split in how two different sports viewed the exact same athlete. On the fairways, Caitlin was treated like a headline attraction, someone whose presence didn't just add excitement but transformed the entire event. Tournament organizers paired her with one of the most recognizable names in women's golf, gave her wall-to-wall coverage, and let the cameras follow every conversation, every swing, every moment. Broadcasters talked about her like she was a generational figure, someone reshaping how women's sports draw crowds. It was effortless, natural, and almost jarring to watch her be embraced without any hesitation. That's why the contrast hit so hard for fans watching from home. In the WNBA, the conversation around Clark has been far more complicated. Instead of seeing her drawing power as an opportunity, league officials often come across, at least to many viewers, as cautious, guarded, or oddly reluctant to acknowledge how dramatically she has shifted the league's visibility. Supporters online have spent months pointing out the disconnect, how she can break attendance records, shock TV ratings, and pull entirely new audiences into the sport, yet still feel like the league tiptoes around giving her full credit. Nobody can say exactly why, but the optics aren't subtle. Where golf rolled out the red carpet, basketball sometimes feels like it's rolling out bubble wrap. Commentators at the event even mentioned this tension, noting how surprising it was that a different sport treated her more like a star than the one she actually competes in. Whether those opinions are fully accurate or not, the perception alone says a lot about how fans interpret the situation. The feeling isn't that Clark wants special treatment. She's never asked for it. The feeling is that she's earned genuine recognition, and another sport had no trouble showing what that looks like. Meanwhile, her home league still appears unsure of how to handle a player who became bigger than anything they've had in years. Watching her move through the golf event so freely, with no undercurrent of tension or politics, made the difference nearly impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about applause or camera time. It was about a sport that saw a rising star and didn't hesitate to amplify her impact. And as fans kept comparing the two worlds in real time, the question hung in the air. If golf can see what she brings, why does her own league seem afraid to use the same playbook? What made the day unforgettable wasn't just the crowd or the cameras. It was the chemistry Caitlin shared with the two people walking beside her. Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull showed up as her caddies, wearing customized outfits with their WNBA jersey numbers stitched across the back. From the moment they stepped onto the course, the three of them fell into the same rhythm they have in the locker room: Constant jokes, playful trash talk, and that easy kind of friendship you can't fake. Every time Caitlin lined up a shot, Sophie would toss out a comment, Lexi would fire one back, and the fans around them ate up every second of it. It felt less like a pro-am and more like a behind-the-scenes look at how tight that fever core really is. But the moment that lit up social media came out of nowhere. As they walked down one of the fairways, a group of fans started chanting for Sophie and Lexi to re-sign with Indiana. They weren't whispering either. They yelled it loud enough for half the course to turn their heads. Without missing a beat, Sophie spun around, grinned, and shouted, "Tell them to pay us." The crowd erupted. Lexi laughed so hard she nearly dropped the golf bag, and Caitlin just shook her head, trying not to crack up as she lined up her next shot. It was funny, quick, and completely unfiltered, but it also hit a nerve that everyone following the league has been talking about for months. The line wasn't planned, it wasn't polished, but it was honest. You could hear the frustration wrapped inside the humor, the kind of real talk players usually only share in private. Fans knew instantly what she meant. They understood how much value players like Sophie and Lexi bring, how dramatically the league's visibility has changed in the last year, and how the conversation around compensation hasn't kept up with what players are producing. Hearing that message delivered mid-round, on a golf course of all places, made it hit even harder. And once that clip hit the internet, the clip took on a life of its own. People replayed it not just because it was funny, but because it captured something bigger. Players know their worth, fans know their worth, and now the quote was echoing across an event the WNBA had nothing to do with. The golf course became a stage for a conversation the league has been tiptoeing around for years, and instead of happening in a boardroom or a press conference, it exploded from a single, off-the-cuff joke delivered in the middle of a sunny fairway.
What made it even more powerful was how naturally the moment unfolded. Nobody looked uncomfortable. Nobody tried to walk it back. It was just a real comment from a real player saying something fans have been thinking for a long time. And as that laughter rolled across the gallery, it was impossible to ignore how perfectly it captured the tension building beneath the surface of the league. Sophie didn't start an argument. She exposed a reality. And the way the crowd reacted made it clear they were already on her side. The numbers behind Caitlin's appearance didn't just support the hype, they blew straight past it. What happened at that golf event wasn't normal, and anyone pretending otherwise wasn't paying attention. Attendance didn't rise a little, it skyrocketed. Fans packed the course in numbers nobody expected, many of them showing up hours early just to get a glimpse of her walking to the tee box. People who had never watched the golf event before were suddenly streaming coverage, refreshing highlights, and searching for clips of her swing. Broadcasters called it a surge. Fans called it the Clark effect. Whatever name you give it, this spike was impossible to miss. And it wasn't just physical turnout. Online engagement exploded the moment she arrived. Social media feeds flooded with videos of her warming up, photos of fans wearing fever jerseys on the fairway, and clips of her interactions with Sophie and Lexi. Every time she smiled at a fan or joked with her caddies, those moments were instantly clipped, captioned, and carried across the internet. Even casual sports watchers, people who don't normally follow women's basketball or golf, were suddenly weighing in. That's not normal for a Pro-Am event, and it wasn't because of golf. It was because of her. Then came the broadcast numbers. The Golf Channel dedicated extended coverage to her round, tracking her shot for shot like she was the main storyline of the entire event. Commentators openly said she was drawing in an audience they hadn't seen before, and they were right. Viewers tuned in who usually scroll right past golf unless it's a major championship. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a demonstration of how one athlete can pull multiple fan bases into the same room just by showing up. Even the analysts watching from studios miles away admitted it was rare to see someone expand the reach of a sport they don't even professionally play. Meanwhile, fans online kept pointing out the contrast, how a single appearance from Clark could surge attendance, elevate viewership, and create social momentum that other sports spend millions trying to manufacture. They highlighted how her impact isn't confined to basketball. It spills over into every environment she steps into. Golf recognized this instantly and leaned into it with open arms. They didn't try to downplay it. They didn't pretend it was something else. They understood exactly what they had and took advantage of it. And that's what makes the numbers so important. They weren't just impressive, they were proof. Proof that she draws new audiences, proof that she changes the energy of an event, proof that her influence extends across sports, demographics, and age groups in a way that very few athletes, male or female, can pull off. The numbers expose what many fans have been saying for months. When you give Caitlin Clark the spotlight, the sport grows. When you embrace her presence, people show up. And when another league ignores that reality, the numbers make the truth impossible to hide. The moment Caitlin confirmed she was fully healthy, the entire conversation around next season shifted. It wasn't just Fever fans getting excited. Analysts, reporters, even casual viewers began talking about the ripple effect her return could create. Indiana managed to fight their way into the postseason without having their star at full strength, and that alone said a lot about the team's potential. Now, imagine that same roster with Caitlin operating at full capacity, her range restored, her passing sharper, her confidence fully reloaded. Suddenly, the idea of a championship run in 2026 doesn't sound hopeful, it sounds realistic. But the implications stretch far beyond the Fever's trophy chances. Clark's day on the golf course showed that she's not just building a playing career, she's building a cultural presence that reaches every corner of women's sports. When she stepped onto that tee box and the crowd swelled behind her, it sent a clear message about what modern fans respond to: authenticity, personality, connection, and star power. And whether certain league executives want to admit it or not, she has all four in excess. Her ability to shift interest across sports means the future isn't limited to what happens on the basketball court. If she continues building relationships across leagues, collaborating with athletes from different sports, and appearing at crossover events, she becomes something the WNBA has never fully had before: a true multi-sport draw. Someone whose influence can pull new fans into arenas, boost broadcast numbers, and ignite sponsorship interest simply by existing within the conversation. Few athletes get to that level. Fewer still can sustain it. Clark looks like she's headed directly there. But there's another layer to this future, one that fans online have been discussing non-stop. The contrast between how golf embraced her and how her own league has sometimes seemed hesitant only becomes more obvious as her star grows. That tension doesn't need to become adversarial, but it does force a choice. Either the league evolves fast enough to match the momentum she brings, or it risks getting left behind while other sports capitalize on opportunities it didn't take. None of this is guaranteed, of course. These are just the possibilities people are talking about. But the direction of the conversation says everything about how her influence is perceived right now.
And then there's the Fever themselves. Sophie and Lexi's presence at the event wasn't random. It showcased a real bond, a genuine connection between players who believe in what they're building together. Every little interaction, every inside joke, every shared moment showed a team with chemistry, confidence, and belief. If that core stays intact, and if Caitlin returns in the conditions she displayed on that fairway, Indiana walks into next season with something rare: momentum, unity, and a superstar who looks ready to launch into the next phase of her career. That's why the future feels bigger than a single season or a single trophy chase. Clark's return signals a shift, a turning point, not just for her team, but for the entire landscape of women's sports. She's proving that a star can elevate an event she doesn't even professionally compete in. She's proving that fans will follow her across sports, states, and screens. And she's proving that the leagues that embrace her will grow faster than the ones that hesitate. The question now isn't whether Caitlin Clark will shape the future. It's how far that influence will reach, and whether the institutions around her will be ready for what comes next. From the moment Caitlin stepped on to that first tee box to the final putt of the afternoon, the entire day felt like a preview of a much bigger story unfolding around her. What looked like a simple pro-am appearance turned into a real-time lesson in how a sport can explode with energy when it chooses to amplify instead of contain its brightest star. Fans flooded the course before she even arrived. Broadcasters shifted their coverage the instant she picked up a club. And when she casually revealed she was fully healed, the entire conversation around the upcoming season flipped on its head. It wasn't just a feel-good moment. It was a reminder that her presence changes the temperature of any room, court, or fairway she walks into. But the contrast was impossible to miss. Golf embraced her with open arms, treated her impact as an opportunity, and let her shine without hesitation. Meanwhile, her home league spent much of the year wrestling with how to handle someone whose popularity stretches far beyond anything they've experienced. Whether intentional or not, that imbalance created a question that followed her through every hole she played. Why does a sport she doesn't even compete in seem more prepared to celebrate her than the one she's actively elevating? Her interactions with Sophie and Lexi only made that question louder. Their jokes, their honesty, and that now famous "tell them to pay us" moment turned a golf course into a stage where the realities of player value and league direction were suddenly laid bare. It was funny, sure, but it was also revealing. Those few words captured something many fans have been trying to articulate for months. Players know their worth, and they're tired of waiting for the business side to catch up. By the time the sun started dropping and the crowd began drifting toward the exits, one thing had become clear. This wasn't just about a golf swing or a shoulder update. It was about momentum, influence, a shift happening in real time. Caitlin showed she's not just a WNBA star, she's a cross-sport force who can ignite an event simply by stepping into frame. And the leagues that recognize that will be the ones that grow with her. The ones that don't might find themselves watching from the sidelines as other sports seize the moment. So the question now isn't whether her impact is real. The question is what happens next. Does the WNBA embrace the wave she's already created, or does it keep playing catch-up while other sports roll out the red carpet? Does Indiana turn her fully healed return into a championship run, or does the league's internal friction overshadow the story waiting to be written? Nobody knows exactly how it will play out, but one thing is certain. After what we saw at Pelican Golf Club, the future just got a whole lot more interesting. If this is what happens when she plays golf for a day, imagine what's coming when she steps back onto the court.